film presented here is the 1962 multi-director anthology Love at 20, or rather more specifically, one of its segments. This omnibus film by 5 directors is set in 5 different cities: Paris, Rome, Tokyo, Munich, and Warsaw. These big, mostly European, director-focused anthology films used to be rather common, but not so much nowadays. The French section by Francis Truffaut is a follow-up to his highly regarded The 400 Blows, and has since been re-released on DVD and in theatres. The other 4 parts, or standalone short films, have not been, due to complicated rights issues. This includes the Tokyo segment. The lead character is a 19-year-old man who works at an iron factory. He just works from morning till night and has no fun. His 20th birthday is coming up in a month, but he doesn't have anything to celebrate. His co-workers, with a certain gallows humour, say, "We'll reach 50 still waiting for something to happen, so we should just cut our throats." I don't want to go on like this. A desire to do something about this state of affairs arises in him. One day he passes a beautiful high school girl on the street. Unlike a 38-year-old woman who has been chasing him, she is young, beautiful, and elegant. He falls in love with her from afar. All he can think about every day is her. But he cannot even ask her name, much less start a conversation with her. He starts stalking her, waiting for her in the street and following her home. While wiping his dirty hands on a tattered pornographic magazine, he suddenly thinks of something. The next day, they start making knives at the factory. He makes knives with all his heart, thinking of that beautiful girl. The aforementioned 38-year-old woman who likes him keeps coming around, and he gets teased by his friends because of this. He sees her as trouble for him. The woman asks to be his girlfriend. Enigmatically, he smiles at her and says, "Wait and see." The next day, she is found dead, a knife wound in her chest. On the eve of his 20th birthday, after a month of stalking, he makes his move. He approaches her on the street with a knife, but at the last minute throws the knife away on the spot and strangles her to death with his bare hands. Then he drags her into the darkness and kisses her, touches her. By killing her, he finally makes her his. He then celebrates with a look of satisfaction on his face. Back at home, with an expression signifying accomplishment, he remembers her dead face and plays with her brooch. He calls a newspaper from a payphone, confessing his crime. "I loved her too much, and that's why I killed her. I wanted everybody to know that. Only then does she belong to me forever." The story is based on the real-life 1958 Komatsugawa murder case, which director Shintaro Ishihara used as inspiration for his screenplay. In the actual case, an 18-year-old iron factory worker murdered a serving woman and a high school girl, and had sex with the corpses, before phoning the newspapers and the police to confess. and sent the victims' belongings, a comb and a hand mirror, to their families. The trial proved to be controversial. The defendant was an 18-year-old second-generation Korean resident of Japan named Ichin-nu, from a poor background but with a high IQ. Plenty of evidence suggested that he might be innocent, and there was even a campaign for a reduced sentence by academics and writers, and petitions signed by his friends. Look at this picture at the time of his arrest. Look at the smile on his face. Apparently he said something along the lines of, "Finally, you've come," to the police. He was sentenced to death primarily because he never denied the crime and never pleaded his innocence to either his family or his lawyers. In 1963, when the film Lover 20 was released in Japan, his death sentence had already been carried out. However, several books were published afterwards that suggested he may have been falsely convicted. Because of this background, it may be difficult to rescreen the film or make it available on DVD. However, Nagisa Oshima's Death by Hanging, about the same case, is readily available to see nowadays. So who knows? Koji Furuhata, who played the lead role, retired from acting in 1964 due to a strange illness that left him deaf and unable to speak. He did, however, star in one more film. Director Ishiro Honda tried to coax Furuhata out of retirement 3 times before he eventually agreed to star in just this one film that became the cult favorite, Frankenstein Conquers the World. The Frankenstein of the title is a monster, but a human monster, so a monster suit would not have been appropriate. Honda needed a distinctive face. He even considered Boris Karloff, but couldn't ask him to fight and do action and stunts at 78 years old. Shintaro Ishihara recommended Furuhata as an actor with just the right look. Director Shintaro Ishihara was born in 1932 and made his debut as a novelist with Season of the Sun in 1955, when he was a 23-year-old university student. The novel is about a protagonist who is indifferent to social mores and rules and lives according to his own desires. It was modelled on the student life of Ishihara's own brother and his friends, and became a bestseller with some 267,000 copies sold due to its then explicit sexuality. The novel was made into a film the following year, which was also a big hit. Young people imitated the hairstyles and fashions of the film's characters, who hung out at the beach and yacht about on the sea, and the media dubbed this new generation the Taiyozoku, or Sun Tribe. Ishihara went on to write original screenplays for several other Sun Tribe films. The Sun Tribe films are characterized by financially affluent college boys who do not adhere to social mores and pursue thrills in a tawdry manner. The films depict a life of hedonism driven by physical desires. The films then became to be seen as a social problem, with several cases of disorderly conduct, rape and assault committed by so-called Sun Tribers being seen as influenced by the films. Because of this, Sun Tribe films were given certificates that prohibited minors in theatres around the country. However, the majority of students in Japan at the time were in fact poor, and very few lived like the film's protagonists. So why did the Sun Tribe films trigger such a response in young people that couldn't really relate to them to the extent that they became a social phenomenon? The answer is undoubtedly that they were aspirational. The Second World War had ended in 1945 and the US occupation ended in 1952. Come 1955, and most people were still living in poverty, but the economy was slowly improving and was about to enter a period of rapid growth. The characters in the film enjoy their leisure time on boats and yachts, wear fashionable clothes, drive convertible cars, and even have maids in their homes. They were free from oppression from the occupying forces and from the poverty brought about by the war. It was a sign, a glimmer of hope, that the world was finally coming out of the slump caused by poverty and turmoil, and that a new era of consumption and capitalism had arrived. The sun that had previously set was beginning to rise on a very different Japan, and its fierce rays of sunshine and the anticipation of its coming radiance enthused the youth. The old morals and values have been discarded, and a new set of values, the new wave, or Nouvelle vague, has arrived. The second Sun Tribe film, Crazed Fruit, was made in 1956. The film's depiction of sex and violence became an issue, and the PTA went so far as to hold demonstrations in front of cinemas. The Diet and the Ministry of Education debated the issue. A film ethics committee was set up, and film censorship, which was supposed to have ended at the end of the US occupation, was reinstated. Ishihara's aforementioned younger brother, Yujiro, served as an advisor for the film. So alien was the lifestyle for most Japanese. He taught the production how to sail boats and yachts, how to talk to young people, water skiing, etc. None of the staff had ever seen water skiing before. He also ended up playing the lead as a consequence and became a major star. Shintaro, the older Ishihara brother, spoke French and had a conversation with Truffaut when he went to France to have a meeting about Lover 20. When Ishihara asked him, "What influenced you to start the Nouvelle vague?" Truffaut apparently said, "I only vaguely remember the name, but I saw a film that made a big impression on me. It was a Japanese film called Passion on the Beach." Ishihara had never heard of this Passion on the Beach film, so he asked what the story was about, and then did he realize that he was talking about crazed fruit. This anecdote certainly smacks of a certain self-grandizing, arrogant swagger that would not be out of character for Ishihara, and should perhaps be taken with a whole sackload of salt. However, in a biography of crazed fruit director Ko Nakahira, written by his daughter, there is an intriguing anecdote from director Nagisa Oshima. In an exchange of letters between Oshima and Alain Resnais, he of Last Year at Marienbad fame, Resnais wrote that when Jean-Luc Godard was preparing Breathless, he screened Crazed Fruit a number of times for reference. Crazed Fruit was shown in Paris in 1958 under the title Passion Juvénile. Francois Truffaut, a writer for the Cahiers du Cinéma at the time, wrote a review of the film. It was the first Japanese film to be included in the Cinémathèque Française archive on Truffaut's recommendation. I found his review of the film, so I will give you a few excerpts. Please excuse the poor translation and paraphrasing. The direction is spectacularly good, with fresh inventiveness and eccentricity that defies conventional techniques. Take, for example, the innovative jump cuts. Almost all of the action sequences are off the wall and unorthodox. The imagery is offbeat and clearly misplaced deliberately. Because it was shot in sequence, there was the chance to capture and take advantage of events not previously accounted for in the shooting script. When you are young, you are always in a hurry and cannot wait and sit still. When you are young, you are full of ideas that are bursting at the seams. Young filmmakers, therefore, have to make crazy, speedy films. Characters rush and rush, cut, slash with each other, trying to get to the end mark before the other cuts. Such a film, swollen full of little ideas. The year before he wrote this review, Truffaut had criticized his own country's films. French cinema dies under a false tradition. The good cinema of the pre-war era, lackluster films shot in old-fashioned studios. Tired of the existing French and possibly larger European cinema, this Japanese film must have seemed wonderfully fresh and exotic to him. Director Ko Nakahira was 6 years older than screenwriter Shintaro Ishihara, and this was his second film and expected to be successful. It was Ishihara's first attempt at the film script. Both of the two male leads had little acting experience and were almost amateurs. The shooting schedule was just 17 days. The film is characterized by a fast rhythm and tempo that had never been seen in Japanese cinema before, or at least not since the silent days of classics such as A Page of Madness, but they were outliers. Masahiko Sugawa, who played the lead role, said the director always made him say his lines quickly, so that he would lose intonation and emotion. Faster, faster, faster! As soon as one actor finishes their lines, the next starts speaking. As Truffaut wrote, when you are young, you are always in a hurry and cannot wait patiently. This feeling is expressed throughout the film. On this subject, director Nakahira wrote in an essay, "The slow tempo is the established method of division and common sense of conventional Japanese cinema. For example, the stereotype that dialogue must be said with some intonation, with a rest after each punctuation. This is a stereotype. The actors and handlers in the film industry and all around me are poisoned by this prehistoric rhythm. There are many barriers that I have to break through in order to speed up the tempo of my work." Another distinctive feature of the film at the time was the incessant off-kilter Dutch angling. This was also praised in Truffaut's review. It is clear that Truffaut was a great admirer of the film, of its youthful energy. Perhaps Truffaut and Godard wanted to bring this youthfulness to French cinema. Truffaut went on to make The 400 Blows. Godard made Breathless. Both films and Crazed Fruit end with close-ups of their young protagonists. Jean-Pierre Léaud at 14, Jean Seberg at 22, and Masahiko Sugawa at 16. The film ends with these three looking as if they are challenging us and the world, as if they want to say something. I think their expressions represent a challenge to old values, a challenge to the film industry. Truffaut and Ishihara were born in the same year. One created the Sun Tribe boom that took Japan by storm, and the other started the Nouvelle Vague in France. They were both in their mid-20s at the time. What they both had in common was a challenge to and a dislike of established values, and the young energy to support it. The sun is at its peak for only a short time, but when it is at that peak, it emits a violent energy of brilliance. Both Ishihara and Truffaut were at their peak at that time, and their intense energy drove many people into a frenzy.